Hi everyone, it's Dr. Gage here. This week we are going to talk about TPC Group and the Port Neches chemical plant explosion that occurred right during Thanksgiving period. A lot of my colleagues and students were impacted by this blast, and we are very lucky that it happened during Thanksgiving break at night and not during a school day, because there are schools that are in the sacrifice zone near where this blast would be. And what's important to note is that before this blast occurred, a year before, the levels that were coming out were extremely high, and they were spewing an extremely high number of chemicals. And they also had reached a settlement with the EPA. So we almost could have known this was coming. And this is a reality for many of the industry and much of the industry in this area. We know when it's coming. We just don't know when. But we know that it's coming. And I just wanted to note that there have been a number of really deadly environmental disasters, and some of America's 10 worst ones are when, for example, if you remember back in 2010, that millions of gallons of oil leaked into the Gulf of Mexico. It killed all the wildlife. And it was a preventable problem, just like with the blast in Port Neches. It was preventable. And most environmental disasters, like the natural disasters, like earthquakes, hurricanes, floods, and wildfires, those are outside of human control. But a lot of America's biggest disasters and catastrophes are man-made, and has to do with that we are destroying the planet for fuel, for food, for building materials, to help us in the immediate, but we're destroying us for later. So some of the big ones: the Gulf Dead Zone. We are located in the Gulf Dead Zone. There's an area in the Gulf of Mexico. It starts at the Mississippi River and it extends into Texas. It's a wildlife dead zone for many months of the year, and it's devoid of wildlife, except for the bodies of shrimp, crabs. It's there's like 7,000 miles wide of wildlife that just don't exist because the water, the oxygen is gone out of the water, of the polluted water. There's a 3-mile island meltdown. This is a nuclear generating site in Pennsylvania. There was an accident there. It caused an extreme amount of radiation to be released in the atmosphere. They say that no one died because of the accident and there was no health problems, but a lot of the residents there don't believe that, and they have made a class action lawsuit about this with what happened to them and the health aspects. In the 1930s, we had the Dust Bowl, and extensive farming combined with severe drought caused it. And there was just these huge dust storms generating these black blizzards that took, it was huge, 10,000 feet high, would blow cars off the road. And an estimated 2.5 million people were displaced because of it. The Love Canal, it's a neighborhood in Niagara Falls, New York, when there was 21,000 tons of toxic waste had been buried underneath it. It was a dumping ground here during the 1920s, 1940s, and all of these toxins had seeped into the canal. And a lot of the children, about 56% of the children born between 1974 and 1978, had birth defects. How awful is that in that area? Pacific Garbage Patch. The Pacific Ocean has a garbage patch where there is just all of these plastic bags and bottles and other trash that stretch hundreds of miles across the Pacific Ocean. And there's like 100 million tons of debris, and about 80% of this debris comes from land and just the litter. So think about that the next time you decide to throw your garbage on the ground instead of the trash, or just when you take an extra this or an extra that and you're not really going to use it, when you're shopping with plastic bags instead of reusable bags, etc., because it's killing the marine life, especially the sea turtles, and it's ending up in the digestive system of fish, birds, and other animals, and it's leaking toxins into the ocean. Some of these fish we go back and re-eat, so we get it into us. Another one is the the Libya asbestos contamination. It killed more than 200 people when that blew up and the smoke happened, and that was back in 1919. And in 1990, that plant finally closed. So can you just imagine all the people who got sick up until that time? No one knows really how many people, but definitely a lot. In that area, they see about 20 new patients a month for asbestos-related diseases. Another one, the Tennessee coal ash spill, that happened in 2008 when 1.1 billion gallons of coal ash crumbled, spilling toxic ash into Tennessee. And a study done by Duke University revealed that the toxic elements in the coal ash caused a health risk. And a lot of the residents there, reported a lot of health problems like headaches, respiratory problems, and seizures. And toxins were found in the tissues of fish in the Tennessee Clinch and Emory rivers. Then you also have the Exxon Valdez oil spilled. That happened off the Alaskan coast in '89, and that's when the supertanker, the big boat that carries the oil, hit a reef, and 10.8 million gallons of crude spilled all over the ocean. Then you have the pitcher lead contamination in Oklahoma that occurred. It's now a ghost town. It's one of the most toxic places in America, according to the EPA. And they produced lead and zinc. And this once bustling town is full of abandoned homes and empty storefronts. And, you know, the lead contaminated mine sites were left behind. It was deemed too toxic to clean up, and so the government actually paid people to leave. Then you have the Gulf oil spill that happened in 2010. An estimated 206 million gallons leaked into the Gulf of Mexico of oil. It was the worst oil spill in U.S. history at that time. And the spill began when the oil well a mile below the surface of the Gulf blew out, causing an explosion of BP's horizon. I remember that one. About 40% of the coastal westlands from southern Louisiana on up, you saw the birds covered in oil. And so a lot of habitat was ruined. Many long-term effects from this spill. It was super devastating. And so what you can gather from all of this is a lot of these man-made disasters, just like TCP and that would happen in Port Neches, are preventable. But we have to get a hold of industry. And that's what we need to do, because they're at fault here, and they need to do a better job at keeping us healthy and safe, especially safe. And that's not happening, because a lot of this stuff, a lot of these disasters were super, super preventable.